I have cracked the secret of the ghost bullets. I'm Eddie Webb.
I'm Chris Spivey.
And today we're going to talk about Detective L here on Genreless. Hello and welcome to another episode of Genreless, where Chris and I are currently talking about shit we don't think we'd otherwise get a chance to talk about. And I chose this episode. I chose this show. And I chose this show for a very specific reason, which is someone recommended the show to me several years ago. I watched 2 episodes and kind of liked it. And I thought this would be a chance to learn more about the show, and I have completely failed on that front.
You didn't do any research, Eddie? Because I know next to nothing about this show.
Incorrect. I tried very hard to do research on this show. There's very little English language research on the show. In fact, there's not that much Chinese language information on this show. But to give context for what the hell I'm talking about. Detective L was a show that came out in 2019. It was put out by Tencent, which is a massive Chinese media corporation. They own a lot of at least television streaming platforms and video games. For example, I know friends of mine who have worked for video companies that have since been bought by Tencent, or Tencent has a controlling interest. So Tencent is a massive media conglomeration. And then about 2018-ish, they started putting a bunch of their stuff up on YouTube in conjunction with WeTV, which is their Chinese streaming network. So the idea was, if you're in China, you watch it on WeTV. If you're outside China, you watch it on YouTube, and they would put up subtitles for different languages for their various shows. And so this went online. And I didn't know anything about it, didn't even know it existed until about 3 or 4 years ago, because I was doing research for a friend of mine on Trinity Continuum Adventure, which is a pulp setting set in the 1930s. And one of the things that we wanted to do with that Trinity Continuum is a collection of role-playing games put out by Onyx Path Publishing. Adventure is the version of them that's set in the 1930s, which is their pulp adventure role-playing game. And one of the things that the developing team really wanted to do, I was not part of the development team, I was just kind of helping out, is to expand the scope of the game beyond just North America and Europe. And someone on the team added me, basically says, like, going, hey, check out this show, but also Eddie specifically, I think you would enjoy this. And I was like, okay. So I watched a couple episodes of it. So this is basically a detective show set in 1930 Shanghai, made by a Chinese network on a 2019 moderately slim television budget.
So the little bit I found out, because I as a YouTube person, since I spend more time listening to random stuff, what is the actual name of the show, Eddie? It is not Detective L. Do you feel brave enough?
So let me pull up the so there is a page on Drama Wiki, which apparently is a whole wiki about C-drama, which is Chinese drama, Korean drama, Japanese drama. I believe the title is, according to this, is Shenten.
Because I think that was it. Because the YouTuber I saw basically broke it down and was like, supposedly equal to Gentleman Detective is what the name of the show was supposed to have been. And it's called Detective L because the lead character's name is like Lou, so they did that for us dumb Americans.
Right, and that's something that is kind of interesting about this because, it's very clearly a Chinese television show. But as you point out, the intro sequence does have Detective L in English underneath the main titles. And there are bits and pieces of English signage and whatnot scattered through the show, which kind of implies an intent towards a more global audience. And if I remember my chronology right, this is around the time that American movies were kind of also doing the same thing in reverse, right? They're trying to make movies that would sell both in the US and China. So I think this is kind of a cultural swap, if you will. It's like both sides are making media that could potentially appeal to the opposite partner.
Yeah, because that's one of the reasons I want to. I can't remember, but I think it might have been Avengers when they brought in like the Chinese scientists to help track down Hawkeye or whatever it was, and they did like some different bits like that to increase their appeal of like that franchise.
Right, right. Uh, but I mean, beyond that, like I found out about WeTV. It's apparently the fourth largest streaming service in the world. The other three are Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Disney Plus. If you're curious, so I was
The
surprised by that.
if I can find the YouTuber game, I might need to link them. But they were saying that it's also like this is was considered an S tier show for them.
Oh, really?
So, which yeah, and it was set like in the 30s, which you've already mentioned, it, which is rare at the time and everything. So
Yeah.
that's about the full scope of my knowledge of the show.
Well, the 30 setting sent me down a slightly different rabbit hole, right? Because in the little bit of English language research I found, they kept referring to it specifically as a Republican drama. And I was like, I'm curious what that means, what that distinction matters, because I now know China is called the People's Republic of China. So I'm like, is this is it just, you know, is this in the communist era? And it turns out that's not quite right. There's a whole nuance to the Chinese evolution that I was unaware of, which is that apparently, yes, in 1912, the revolt happened against the rulers, and it became a republic. But 1912, 1949 was when they were still trying to kind of, I guess, they were a republic, but they were not a communist republic yet. That happens in 1949. So there's this kind of 35-year period where there actually are, as I understand it, different governments that are all trying to all kind of lay claim and work together, but also kind of quietly maneuvering around each other a little bit too. But apparently, in recent years, the Republican era has become an increasingly popular time period to put media into. So there's a huge renaissance of Republican media. It's the reason why it's called out is because like media sent at this time is becoming very popular, and arguably is one of the reasons why games like Call of Cthulhu are starting to become very popular in China as well. I know tangentially to this, for my day job, I've been learning more about a Chinese form of roleplay called Jibentia, which is a murder mystery gameplay. And so, like, if you have played those old murder mystery in a box things where each person gets a folder of information about their character, and they all play through the clues until eventually one of them gets revealed as the murderer. Um, that's the kind of thing they've done, though it's much more elaborate and detailed than that. But a lot of the Jubentia scripts, a fair number of them are in the Republican era. There's some modern day ones too, and there's some ones earlier than 2019. But this 35-year period is just a surprisingly fertile ground for that too. So I that matches up with my unrelated research into Chinese media. But like seriously, like this is about all I know. Right? I
Also,
don't know much about the show.
wasn't like 1930 Shanghai like one of the biggest, most metropolitan cities of the time?
Yes, yes. Um, which I know partially because I am currently in Shanghai in my Masks of Nyarlathotep campaign, which is currently running in role playing. So minor spoiler for role playing game, my character is still alive some fucking how. I was down to 7 luck at one point, man. It was not pretty.
I think you all should have gone and played it the real way, Eddie. No luck. No pulp stats. Old school. You'd be on your 18th character right now. You'd be a friend of the cousin of a servant of a sidekick of a relative that you vaguely knew as your primary PC now.
No,
with hand scribbled notes from the first character.
No, it's the exact same character sheet. I just have the third or the fourth or whatever written after the name, and just keep crossing out, add to make the number one bigger.
That's.
If
anyone is curious, I would not suggest playing Mask the without pulp Pulp is a great addition to add for mass games because when I ran it, everyone lost at least 6 characters each, minimum.
And to be clear, like, I am the only surviving character thus far. Like, lots of other player characters died, even with these rules. So like, yeah, it is still a very, very deadly campaign. But anyway, yes, we have made it to the Shanghai chapter in there, and we happens to when we hit there, I was like, wait a minute, I should talk about that detective show from the 30s, and so I pulled a swap with Chris on this one, and it's been interesting to kind of watch with that knowledge in mind. But again, like this is a rarity because it feels like back when we were recording when we first started, we didn't do research. It's like now I've tried to research, I still don't know much. So it's like I don't know. The show existed. Let's talk about it.
All right, before we even get into it, can we just straight up and say that this is someone that saw Sherlock when it came out, and they're like, we could make Sherlock here in 1930. We can steal Sherlock's theme song, and we even do like action beats to it in the theme song. We just make Watson a cool woman that's kicking butt.
No, absolutely. Like this is very much let's make Sherlock Holmes, which again, I think is the reason why I was pointed in my direction, because it's very much the Sherlockian formula. You have the viewpoint character who is the heart of the two-person detective team, and then you have the strange weirdo detective who has lots of good insights and is able to solve the mystery with very little information. So like, yeah, it's very much the Sherlock Holmes formula. And like the sequence, like you mentioned, like it's the BBC Sherlock. Specifically, there are chunks of that theme that is straight up the 2009 Sherlock Holmes movie theme, right? So like it is basically, to be fair, they pulled from a few different Sherlock Holmes media of the time period of like the early aughts. But yes, it is absolutely, let's take the serial numbers off and put it, make Sherlock Holmes through. And then, oh, the Republican era is hot, so let's shut it in the 30s instead.
Since I think we're going to move into the first episode proper, I am going to bring up, I guess, one thing at the top to show how much it is Benny C's Sherlock. Is that in the first episode of Sherlock, if memory serves, I saw it like so long ago, it was about a dress. And I'm leaving that for right now until we get to the end of this.
And also, I'm going to say now, because otherwise I'll be saying this a lot throughout the whole episodes. There are YouTube subtitles provided for this show. They are not good. They very much read like someone used Google Translate and then just threw subtitles up and called it a day. They're very hard to parse. You have to not only read the subtitles, but also kind of get context clues for what the subtitles are at certain moments. So there's a very strong chance that details of this we may get wrong. I did find again drama wiki had a page on this, so that's how I was able to get some of the names, make sure I got the names correct. But this has been just a ride of like this tiny little obscure show.
So curiously, for your version, did you have the Chinese subtitles and then they put the English subtitles over top of them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the Chinese subtitles apparently were burned in to the original audio video,
which made it more fun and interesting to read and watch.
To the point where I had to actually, for the first time in my life, play with the subtitle settings in YouTube, so I could make them bigger and put a non-transparent background behind them to block out most of that, because it's hard to read the white English subtitles on top of the white Chinese subtitles.
Fortunately for me, I used my PS5, so it was on the big TV, and then the English subtitles were slightly under the Chinese subtitles. So,
oh, nice. Yeah, no, I was watching on my computer, so I had to make the subtitles bigger so I can kind of just blot them out. Okay, so we're watching the first 3 episodes because, to be fair, also the first 3 episodes are a case. So season 1, episode 1, fresh off the boat A. Female police officer Qin Xiaoman arrives in Shanghai and takes a cheap room at Sullivan Apartments because the room is rumored to be the scene of a murder. That's why it's cheap, not why she moves in. She hears gunshots from another room and tries to investigate the residents' strange activities, nearly dying in the process. She almost falls off the edge of the building. Ken reports that her new job at the police station. Sorry, reports to her new job at the police station and to her new boss, Superintendent Savoy. There, she sees a suspicious man who pulls out a gun and shoots at Savoy. The man turns out to be the eccentric detective Lu Fei, the titular Detective L. It turns out the gunshot bullets tipped with sawdust so that the bullet can blend into the wood in order to prove a person could be shot by a bullet tipped with bone dust to make a bullet disappear. And the shots she heard were part of Lu's experiments. And we're going to stop there because this makes no fucking sense whatsoever.
The opening title credits.
Yes.
Beautiful. That's all I got to say.
Honestly, I kind of miss opening title sequences that are like a minute and a half long at the beginning of an episode, right? Because I think we've talked about this before in one of our old man shouts at crowd moments, or shouts at clouds moments, that the opening sequence helps to set the mood and the aesthetics for the show you're going to watch. That's one of the reasons why I think I'm glad the James Bond movies, for example, still do these, because it's a great way to kind of show you this is the kind of movie you're going to see. Now, increasingly, the James Bond movie opening sequences get less and less related to the actual plot of the movie, but they still give you kind of the tone and vibe, and one visual symbol that can kind of help you through the movie. And like these are kind of similar, right? It's lots of dramatic shots of the two lead characters in various different exciting circumstances, and a decently pacey theme song. I will briefly jump to the end of these episodes and say that the ending sequences are garbage because it's a boring song and it's just clips from the episode.
I will say that I have no idea because it would always pop up like credits, a preview for the next episode, and I'd skip those.
Right? Yeah, it's after the preview. I did once watch an entire episode just to see what the structure was like, and I was like, no. Minor point. I know Japanese TV shows do this. It looks like from my sample size of this show, Chinese shows also do this, which is that sometimes in the previews are massive spoilers for the next episode. So I generally try to avoid watching the previews. But again, for this episode, I watched, and also I had seen the second episode previously, so like I knew what the twist was going to be in the second episode. So I was like, I watched the whole episode, and you didn't miss anything. So yeah, if you just say, as you see preview on the screen, you can just skip to the end, and you're fine.
So since we're talking about now opening and closing credits, I'm gonna say it feels like they had a runtime they need to hit, but they weren't making it, so they put in the preview trailers for the next episode every single time. Like this hour and a half, essentially, each one's about 35, 40 minutes. Whatever it is, times 3 was really about 10 minutes less for each episode. Yeah. It's like a Marvel approach.
Like if you cut out the previews and the end, and like the extra end and starting credits, and edit this into like a one episode, it'd probably just barely be a 90-minute movie.
Yeah.
And that's a bit short for what we usually do these things for, but I thought, A, there's no point starting another episode, starting the case and not watch the rest of it, and B, there's a little more extra work to kind of just parse what was going on because of the show. So I thought that just threw us enough.
I'm not diminishing your choice. I think it was the right choice. We can see like a full case. I'm just talking about the show structure itself.
Yeah, right. And actually, speaking of show structure, another, since we probably won't talk about otherwise, is they do have bumpers for commercial breaks, it appears. But what's interesting is, A, in the 3 episodes that we watch, there are only 2 of them. So one episode doesn't have a commercial break in it, which is the middle one and also is the longest one. And B, they happen at completely different times in the 2 episodes they do show up in. So I do not know how commercials work in China.
I think we'll probably have our listeners say that we need to watch more Chinese TV shows so we can get a better understanding of it and deeper dives into it.
I would love to watch more Chinese television that had better subtitling.
The subtitles were interesting choice.
Eclectic.
Leave it at that.
Um, but no, so Kin, she shows up, beer beating. Uh, since our Western run has happened, I have grown to love a good train scene. The person gets off a train into town, and I was like, "That's a really cool train. That's I love it. That's a great." And but because it also helps set a lot. It's like she's getting off a train. That tells you immediately a lot that she's new to town. She just came from somewhere else, which means that we already know just by visuals that she's gonna. This is a new area to herself, and she's settling in as we're learning about her journey. And so she's also it tells you from a media standpoint, she's our viewpoint character. If she's coming into
Yes.
town first thing, that's the character we're following. It's very clear. And so even though not our native language, the visual iconography is like, okay, I know exactly what's going on here, and I just easily followed along with what was happening in the scene.
And I love a good period piece. It is
Mhm.
beautiful to be able to like see a representation of 1930 Shanghai. I love it from like top to
Yes.
bottom. Regardless
Yes.
of everything else I say about the show, that alone was magic. Like, loved it.
And to be perfectly honest, that is 80% of the reason why I wanted you to watch this show is because I knew you'd appreciate the period touches.
Because one of my favorite things about watching period piece from the BBC is the BBC does period pieces the best
Mhm.
out of everywhere.
Oh,
And
that
I
reminds me.
loved.
Claudius just went back on the BBC iPlayer today, so I have to go back and watch that.
Ooh, all right. I may have to watch that too.
Mhm.
But yeah, like seeing it here, beautiful. Loved all of it. And as you were saying, I agree. But good train scene.
Right. Um, and then yeah, so we're at Sullivan Apartments. We meet the woman who runs the apartments. To go in, they see there's a
Miss
just
Hudson.
totally not Miss Hudson. Totally not yet Miss Hudson. Um,
A
and
hotter
then
Miss
she
Hudson. I'll just leave it at that.
right who we find out later inherited the business from her husband, quote unquote. In the way she describes it, says sounds super suspicious. But yeah, very much our Mrs. Hudson analog, right? Even though there are other people in it's not just Holmes and Watson there. There's a whole cast of characters all staying in these apartments.
The thing is, from Sherlock's perspective, for all we know, there could be other people staying with Miss Hudson sometimes. They just never focus on them.
Well, the implication is that Holmes and Watson are taking the flats on the first floor above Mrs. Hudson's house. So like it's unlikely. Just that's how those kind of flat shares worked and still work actually. Whereas this is a full apartment building.
Yeah, this is like a hotel. I love it. It's one of the things I love about later seasons of Angel, for instance, is they like acquire a hotel. A hotel is the best setting for like a base of operations if they were going to be focused there.
Yeah. And also, sadly, I do not know the owner's name. I never quite caught it. But she has a gorgeous dress that I just fucking love. There's a beautiful red dress. She wears like all the time too. So yeah, all the
Okay,
details are
we
really, really
get.
interesting.
So what's her name? Because I'm trying not to mispronounce names because we all know
Right.
that I can barely pronounce English names, so it's going to definitely be an issue soon. What's our Watson's name?
Kin.
Ken. So when Ken shows up, the fact that we go into the apartment and she immediately scopes it out and is able to deduce that a murder happened there near instantly is hilarious, but it also shows like a great character who's super competent in what they're doing. Hence, even like finding the chalk outline that is still on the floor.
Yes, which is amazing. And like yeah, and also she climbs out on the building, and when the side falls away, she like hangs on by like 1 foot in one hand, which is ridiculous, but also, like you said, very much shows that she is an extremely competent character, which is great because she's a viewpoint character. We want to be invested in her, and so like because she is a woman, establishing very upfront that she has her own skill set was I thought a very very smart move. Even though she deduced a murder happened by a chalk outline on the floor and a bullet hole in glass. Like I probably could have probably figured it out too, but
But she had to find it, Eddie. She
right,
noticed
right.
like the our Mrs. Hudson analog was acting squirrely. The apartment
Mhm.
was super cheap. So two clues. He's like, someone probably got killed here. And then she put it all together.
Right. And then she's like, "Oh, hey, someone's firing gunshots. I should go investigate." So I'll climb outside and look and peek. And it's like she's also brave, which is a very good quality. And as we find out, she may be a bit headstrong.
This is the most Sherlock piece of the entire run of the episodes that we see. He's like essentially beating a piece of meat in there, then shooting it. And if you remember the first Benny C episode, he's in the morgue beating something, and like the forensic scientist is with him, so you get that view. But then Sherlock later in the episode is shooting in his apartment. Like, ugh.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating because like it's not quite a straight Sherlock Holmes homage, but it uses, like you say, lots of bits of pieces of Sherlock periphery and puts them together in interesting ways. So like, yeah, if you know Sherlock Holmes, if you go into this knowing, oh, it's going to be Sherlock Holmes adjacent, you can easily see all those pieces. But it's not like, it doesn't feel like it's Sherlock Holmes with the serial numbers 5 off and then transplanted to Shanghai. They are their own characters. But yeah,
eventually
you also see the connection. Yeah, eventually, yes. At this point, admittedly, it's the we just heard something is suspiciously similar to the Sherlock Holmes theme. You're prepared for some Sherlock Holmes shenanigans. So let's get that out of the way first, right?
If Lou, I would not have been surprised in the apartment scene when he's like shooting a gun and like beating everything, if he had turned the camera and shouted, "I am Khan Noonien Singh," that wasn't Benedict Cumberbatch.
Oh God.
That's a Star Trek joke for people in case.
Yes.
It's been a while now since that movie came out.
Oh God. So Star Trek.
That is how Sherlock that was.
Star Trek 2. I didn't remember the subtitle for it anymore. It's like Star Trek 2, but it's not bad. It's like
Into Darkness.
Into Darkness. That's it. It's from and it was something edgy and pointless.
Like it was made in the 90s.
Right.
Yeah.
Then the police station. We get a Superintendent Savoy, which again is going to be our Lestrade analog, right? He's the kind of authoritarian police officer who's also a bit clueless, and kind of just lets the outside detective roll over him, to the point where a guy who's not a police officer can walk to a police station, shoot off a firearm, and he literally just goes, "That happens sometimes."
That is probably the best breaking point. We started moving away though from the Sherlock TV series. Like even that other Sherlock, Benny C couldn't have gone and done that. So that's like a good point to start saying we're kind of our own show with like our own understanding of how things should operate. Right. But we get a great action beat with Katie when she goes and essentially disables Lou.
Yes.
Like beautiful.
Yeah. And that's something that it's worth noting is all of the action scenes are generally throughout all 3 of these episodes all pretty strong. Some are better than others, but there are very few really bad action sequences. There's a couple that are maybe not as good, but this is a really great example of not only Keenan's ability, but also just it's straight up good, strong, martial arts scene. And because this is specifically Chinese television, there's not that. I'm trying to find a way to phrase this. Sometimes when Asian cinema is designed for export, the style of fighting they do gets lumped into this is a martial arts film, and therefore that kind of takes an outsized portion of what's going on in the film. A example that was done by design this way is Xiao Zhang and the 9 Rings. Because he is a martial artist, most of the characters are martial artists, so they are martial artists, so that's fine because that's what the movie's intentionally trying to do, right? So that's fine. Doctor Strange, less fine for lots of reasons. But because this is set in China, go ahead.
Sorry, speaking of Shang-Chi, the father in that, you reminded me watching that there's a TV show I want us to find that was about 20 years ago that had him as like a detective similar to this with like some other, I can't remember the name of it. If I think of the name of it, I want to track it down because it was like upbeat. It was funny.
Is that a British show by chance?
No, it's a Chinese show.
Okay, because there's a British show called The Chinese Detective, which has a Chinese detective, but in the British police force and around that time period.
So sorry, I was
No,
digressing,
that's
but I
fine. That's
wanted
cool.
to
Yeah.
point that up because I want to put it out so you remember in case I don't remember. But I want to
Yeah,
find
no,
that
totally.
so
I'll
we
look for
want
that.
to.
But what I was saying is like, because this is for today's audience, there's a certain amount of, if you have an action sequence, these are kinds of things that just happen in action sequences. But Lou and Keen fighting, they have very different styles, and also they're the only quote unquote martial artists in the whole show functionally. So like Keen is a police officer, and so she trains specifically to take people down in non fatal ways. And Lou, spoiler, used to be a police officer. And so like it makes sense why those characters have those skills, and it makes sense to have a nice action beat here at the front to kind of again set the tone for the whole series. But it doesn't take a disproportionate amount. It's not here's the martial arts scene, right? Like the Matrix is a good example, right? The Matrix, you can kind of see, okay, here's the martial arts scene coming. You kind of see it coming, and it's framed around that. This is just a man is shooting a police station. I am a trained police officer. I would take him down with martial arts. That is just what would happen there. But it's still a great scene to look at. So it's this weird balance of like it's not staged like it is a capital M martial arts scene, but it is still a lowercase m good martial arts scene.
And I'm going to use this with finger quotes, but it is a grounded martial arts scene because, for instance,
Yeah.
she like throws a plant at him to distract him to give her time to go over and reach him instead of doing like a very pulp move for being able to leap from that side of the room to where he is to do anything. Like that's
Right.
showing you the level of like reality where we're at.
Yeah. It's not quite wire fu, although there's a couple of moments like earlier on when she was trying to hang on the crumbling ledge. The way it was filmed is a little bit implausible, right? But there's just the occasional moments where you get that, but you're right, like it's not. That's not the whole thing. That's just.
Yeah.
And frankly, I believe Keen has all of those moments, so it can just be like she's just that skilled that she occasionally has these slightly implausible moment for her.
Oh, but the explanation about the bullet, Eddie, like, oh my God, my brain hurt.
So like some of this is definitely going to be like because of subtitle garbling, but I have now watched it twice, and basically the logic is that if you shoot someone with bone dust at the tip of the bullet, then the bone dust would be diffused in with the bone dust of the shattered bones from the shot, and therefore you would not realize that they were shot with a bullet, except for the gaping bullet holes in the person, right? Um, I think the intent was that the bullet would disappear, but even that's not true because they would still have to have the accelerant cap at the end of the bullet, especially in the 1930s. So even that doesn't work. So like none of this makes sense from any perspective.
Ah. But the superintendent's like, yeah, it's cool. That's what he does.
Right. But but honestly, again, it tells you what the tone of this show is. Like this is going to be just implausible mysteries. Don't. So it's weird. Like you had this, like you said, slightly grounded martial arts style, followed up by this utterly batshit mystery theory. And so we have a really weird moment of like, in most action mystery movies, the violence is implausible and the mysteries are relatively grounded. We have a weird case of the reverse, right? It's like the violence is relatively contained, but this is gonna be 3 episodes of batshit in terms of the mystery.
And then he basically plops down and goes through police files to just find his own case.
Yes.
Which shows you whatever dynamic this is already different and weird.
Right.
That is not how it should work. You should be assigned cases by
Yes.
the superintendent for your skill set, not you coming in saying, this is a case I'm going to take.
Right. And again, I think it's the case of having Keen there as a viewpoint character really helps because she can very correctly go, what is going on here? And have it explained to her so we, the audience, can fill in. And it helps, but it makes, I think, the relationships feel more organic than they otherwise would. It's like you said, all of these relationships existed before she showed up. They can explain things to her because she is the newcomer. So it feels like this is a world that already existed, even if it is very ridiculous on some levels. It's not comedy, but it is very, very close at times.
and the reason he took the case. Oh,
Right, right. Because it was just
but I
like,
think that's your next beat, so I'm going
yes,
to
yeah.
pause on that.
Okay. Yeah, so Liu is drawn to the case of a missing woman who is Ruan Mangzu because the description of her husband, Mao Buyan, was too specific. Savoy says Liu needs to take a police detective with him, and Liu chooses Qin. At the mention of a formerly rich family, the two quickly realize Buyan is pretending to be ill. Buyan says he spoke with Detective Li Chengqing, and the case was resolved, but as Qin starts to find more holes in his story, his mother, Mrs. Ma, tries to help him deflect. Liu asks Mrs. Ma to leave them alone, and she makes a call to her lawyer, who is Liu Qingfeng. Buyan takes them to his room to get a letter his wife wrote before disappearing, while Liu dismantles Buyan's story and proves the letter is a year old. Buyan starts to explain his marital strife and what really happened in the car when Wu shows up and interrupts the interrogation. The lawyer kicks them out, but not before Liu whispers something in Buyan's ear, and then we have a commercial break. And so this is it's a lot, right? But interestingly, the first chunk we talked about, even though not a lot of plot happened, that was about 10 minutes, but it was 10 minutes of some interesting character building and also some action scenes. This is also about 10 minutes, closer to maybe 12. But it's also the meat of our mystery setup. So a lot has to happen here. And of course, a lot of slightly unfamiliar names get thrown at us. So sorry about that. But like, it basically comes down to a woman's gone missing. Her husband is strongly suspected to be involved with it. The husband thought he had settled the thing with another detective, and his mother is trying to help cover this case up before calling a lawyer to intervene with things. So, like, we still get the structures of what's happening here, even though there's a lot of names thrown around.
Yeah. One of the fascinating points is like when he takes the case and he's describing to Keen why he took the case, he has her recount like her first experience with Miss Hudson to prove that someone wouldn't remember all those details, which is totally accurate and on point. Having been a police officer before, getting eyewitnesses to recall details.
But what I loved about that is it does two things simultaneously, right? I'm glad you called that scene out because he's like, describe, your housekeeper's dress. And Keen actually gets everything except for her nail polish, and her nail polish is like brown versus dark red, which is a shade difference. So, like, you're right. It brings across the known quantity of police officers, which have witness memories are terrible, but also we see that Keen's memory is actually really good. So it still built her up in a scene that could have been, oh, look how stupid this subordinate detective is. It's not. And actually, Liu makes a comment going, you remembered more than most, but you still got something wrong.
It's showing us it's not a Nigel Bruce Watson.
Right, exactly. No, she is extremely competent, and this first episode consistently tries to reinforce that she is, outside of Liu, is actually herself a very good detective.
Yeah. Which is nice because we've established that she comes from the country, so she already has most of these city people looking down on her. For one, for being a woman, and secondly, for being from the country. So that's automatically starting to fight against that narrative.
Right, exactly. And when the husband is talking about the detective that paid him off, we get a flash of them talking, and we do see that the detective in that flashback is one of the detectives in an earlier scene who had just a couple of lines, but who was kind of ribbing her for showing up. So, like, we're also establishing that there's a level of police corruption that's happening involved with all of this, that she is, again, moving into from an outsider perspective. And we've talked before about Westerns, but also detective novels. Some of them are structured around the outsider comes into an established community and starts to bring justice through that outside perspective. And so we can see a version of that happening already, even in this first episode.
I think that guy, if we were continuing to watch it, is going to be our Batman equivalent of Bullock.
Probably. Absolutely. I think it's a very strong possibility.
Mrs. Ma, the older Mrs. Ma.
Yes.
I
loved her. Oh, she is so much fun.
She He's my son is sick. He can't do this. I'm sorry, I can't come down. Why is that over there? Well, because of this. Like excuse ready, excuse ready. Beautiful work was on fire until her stupid son destroyed everything.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really good because especially with watching foreign language media, um, performances sometimes matter more. And also this is the case where the subtitles were really rough. So like all of these actors did a really good job of communicating what their characters are thinking and doing through physicality and intonation. Um, in ways because we couldn't follow the dialogue as well. And so, yeah, like the balance of the husband being very obviously nervous and skittish and stumbling over himself, and her just so smoothly, like, oh no, it's this. Always, you said, always having the answer, always being a plum. Um, and then when she tries to stay involved in the conversation, and Lou just aggressively, like, you need to leave this conversation. And she gets that she doesn't say much, but she has that kind of indignant stance that we can recognize as like, how dare you? And then to see her later, like whispering into the phone, like in a darkened room, and it's just like, okay, you're up to some shit. You're up to some shit.
And then we get gonna get a good view of how hyper competent Lou is by almost having the husband confess from that short period of time with them being together. And he has like
Right.
his whiskey in hand that the husband's drinking heavily, like he's drinking with him, but he's not ever really drinking.
Hmm.
And almost like broke the case within minutes. Very
Yes.
Holmesian.
Yes. Um, but again, what's interesting is that uh, uh, Lou and Kin have different questioning styles, right? Lou's style, as you point out, is much more. I already know basically everything and rolling out the case in Sherlock Holmes style, so you might as well just fill in the gaps for me. Whereas Kin is much more the methodical police interrogator. Again, separating witnesses from each other, needling the husband on specific details of his testimony. And so she's breaking down the stories and putting in those wedges into the story that Lou's unable to break open with his deductions. So already they're working really well as a team, which is surprisingly hard to do in this kind of two detective narrative. Because as well, I saw in the Sherlock Holmes run, it's really easy to marginalize the Watson role in a lot of these cases. And so the show's continually putting her into important pieces of the investigation. She has her own
Yeah.
skill set. It is just not the same skill set that Lou has.
Which the other thing that was interesting for me as a fact is from if I look at Martin Freeman's Watson and I'm looking at her Keen, their skill sets. Sorry, let me rephrase that. How their methodical, logical approaches parallel each other perfectly. Watson's
Mhm,
medical logical approach and her like detective logical approach, and they're functioning in the same capacity,
mhm.
but vastly different, which is nice to see for something that we'll say is an homage.
Right, right. It's almost like, rather than looking at the surface of Sherlock Holmes, although again, they have little notes that if you're familiar with it, you'll see. Instead, the kind of deconstructed, what does this relationship actually do? And what are the roles they actually have in modern Sherlock Holmes adaptations, where Watson is a nearly equal partner, and then reframing them into this new structure they have. So, like, again, it's like Savoy is the kind of Lestrade analog, but also he has a position of power over the two detectives, which is not the usual dynamic in these adaptations. But he still fills the narrative role of the police detective that the other detectives have to explain things to, right? And as you say, like Keen is a much more putting in the hard work style detective, whereas Lou comes with the brain deductions, but also, as we see here, starts to get things wrong pretty fast.
So my question for you is I've never seen Elementary, but how does it stack up against the Elementary's portrayal of Watson and Holmes?
Pretty close. Lucy Lou's Watson is night. Well, she's a former practicing medical. And she's actually so Lucy's character was a surgeon who something bad happens during her previous job, and so she is now a live-in counselor for people for recovering addicts, which is why she lives with Holmes initially, which is a great dynamic. they're not friends to start off with. She's there because that is her job to live with him, and he is an asshole to live with. It's a great setup for about 3 episodes, right? But she also, again, is competent in her own way, and Holmes in Elementary is very much, I just know stuff, and I'm going to be kind of bitter and frustrated about it. The big difference is the Elementary Holmes takes time to warm up to Watson, which I think is one of the rare changes from the adaptation. Most of the adaptations, Holmes and Watson click pretty quickly. In Elementary, Holmes takes time to warm up to Watson and does not trust her for a while.
Okay.
And so a lot of the initial animosity slowly evolves into gentle ribbing, which is a nice dynamic to see over the course of 22 episodes of American television, right? They don't have that kind of time for this. So you have Ken and Lou in lockstep pretty quick. But what's interesting is that usually Watson has a lot of respect for Holmes, and Holmes only has some respect for Watson. Holmes, it takes a while in the original stories and the other adaptations for Holmes to recognize Watson's contributions to the investigation. The reverse is actually happening here. Lou likes Ken very quickly. Ken thinks Lou is a liability for most of the first 2 episodes. And it's an interesting dynamic because Lou needs to keep Ken on his side so he can keep doing the investigation, because he cannot do the investigation without a police detective active presence. Ken does not need him there. So he has to keep proving his worth, which again is a different dynamic. And it keeps the narrative centered on Ken in a way that you don't usually see in these kinds of adaptations.
I like it. I like it a lot.
The only thing I was going to say is, like you said, relevance to the BBC Sherlock, how they cross-cut interrogations and deductions and with musical cues is a way to keep everything exciting. And that's something that I feel like they're directly drawing from that version of Sherlock Holmes, because it is really hard to keep, as we've seen in our Sherlock Holmes run, it's hard to keep lots of talking to people exciting, especially for modern audiences. And this does a reasonably good job of drawing from that school of we'll quickly cut between different things. We'll have lots of different camera cuts inside of the interrogation. We'll have random zooms on objects, stuff like that. And there's other visual techniques they'll do a bit later, but that's, at this point, it's just mostly editing and pacing. Now, anything else before we move on?
No, just a commercial break.
Commercial break. That night, Lou and Ken return to the mansion and examine the car that was suspected of potentially hitting the woman, and find fragments of painted nails and a scrap of the wife's dress. Lou reconstructs what happens, that Ruan tried to stop Bouillon from leaving and grabbed onto the car as he drove past her, forcing the car to crash as a result. Ken suspects Ruan is buried by the dog kennel, but Lou believes the car transported the corpse somewhere else. As they investigate, Bouillon comes to the garage and finds it, and the 2 detectives hide in the trunk of the car. Bouillon drives the car to the graveyard, and the 2 detectives sneak out to confront him, and then we get the preview of the next episode. So, in column A of this section, I will put they're continuing the trend of interesting visual deductions by having as they're looking at the car, like the whole room goes black and it's just the car and the 2 of them by it as they're investigating things, and then they're kind of reconstructing the scene, both with them in the scene and also just a straight shot of what actually happened. So like they're both in the scene and not in the scene as we're getting those bits and pieces of reconstruction, which again, a great visual way of basically saying, oh, hey, we found some nails in a scrap of dress. You know, it's like, it's a way to kind of keep all that interesting. But the logic leaps that Lou goes to in this part of the movie, or this episode, are ridiculous. And they only work because one thing I glossed over is at the very, very beginning of the episode, we see the husband driving the car at the woman and then hitting the brakes before we cut away to Kin showing up to Shanghai. So the reconstructing he's saying maps up with that snippet of video we saw at the very beginning of the episode. So we as the audience believe it because it matches what we know of the case. But there's no way he could possibly extrapolate to that fast.
Eddie, are you insulting Lou's mind palace?
I am insulting Lou's mind palace.
Because that's what we have here. It's
It is
different than Holmes's, but it is his mind palace of how he puts it all together.
I mean, short of actually having text showing up on the screen as he deduces things, it is very similar to BBC Sherlock. Yes. But
I want to take a step back, though. You're already at the crime scene. I want to discuss the fact that there's this swanky car that maybe Lou has money. That's because he has a driver and not a taxi. It doesn't look like a taxi to me. And we have Keen trying to hide behind the lamppost, Eddie. She is an elfin woman, I give you, but that lamppost is like super tiny. Hilarious.
That's a good point. There's a lot of great physical comedy in this, and you're right. Like the actor who plays Keen, like she's not only doing a great job of portraying badass, but also she apparently has fantastic comedic timing. Lou's really funny too. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, you see that there's these two actors could do a just straight up comedy very easily. It's very clear. Yeah. They both have the chop and the chemistry. The work. Their chemistry is in no way, shape, or form romantic, but they have a great comedic chemistry together.
Hands down. And even when they're like sneaking around the car to sneak into the place, good beats. I'm loving all of that. The Mind Palace I'm okay with because I've been trained now by the Sherlock show that like this is what is Mind Palace. It's like cool. Right. So I have no issues with it. It's when they get into the car trunk. That is what I've done. I'm like, that is that far I can't go with.
They both fit in the trunk, yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Which
comfortably.
Yes, and we all know exactly how big 1930s car trunks were, which is basically you fit a suitcase and that's fucking it.
And it also didn't help that I've watched The Burrows recently, and there's a scene where two of them have to get in a car trunk in The Burrows. So yeah, it's a whole thing.
All right. I will say on the car trunk scene, there is a great visual shot of we see them. We don't know they're in a trunk initially. We just see them run behind the car, and then he drives off. Then we see them crammed in a small room, and then the camera pans out, and we can see them inside the trunk of the car before the trunk of the car kind of fades over as the car drives off. It's a great, neat little visual trick of like we see them in the trunk before we realize that's actually what they're in. So again, there's lots of great cinematography in this. But I do want to say, like, for all of the Mind Palace stuff, Kin actually gets a key observation here, although we don't know how key it is at the moment. Is because when they were walking up to the palace, we had, again, interesting shots of the two of them looking around and lots of quick swoosh shots to random just bits of the scenery without any context. But on rewatching it, I noticed that it's Kin. She turns at one point in time, and then we get the swoosh shot to the dog kennel. And she's the one who brings it up later. It's like, I think he's buried dog kennel. And then we cut back to her doing that again. So, like, the show is happy to give Keen certain deductions. And she's like, I saw there was some turned up earth by the dog kennel. I'm wondering if that's where someone's buried. And then Lou contradicts it. And it turns out he's correct. But again, it's later we find out that Keen's actually correct for different reasons. Like this is an important clue, even though Lewis is missing it at the moment.
Yeah. Oh, good stuff.
There's also another great bit. So one thing I haven't talked much is that there are some bits and lines of dialogue that are very clearly references to Chinese culture. But they go by pretty fast. And the big thing is one of the key deductions in this bit, which is relevant also a little bit to the next episode, I'll talk about it here, is that Bouillon, the husband, said the reason why he drove to the cemetery was because it was the time to go pray to his father, right? And then Lou makes a comment that this isn't the right time for that. You're kind of very specific Chinese cultural thing. But those don't really get in the way. There's one in the trunk scene that's specifically relevant that is fascinating, is Lou and Kin talk to each other by writing on each other's palms. And because of the nature Chinese pictographs, they could put a pictograph on the size of the palm, and so they can kind of feel the pictograph being written in the palm, and they can communicate silently that way. And it's a neat way of communicating silently I had never really seen before.
Yeah, I love that. It was a good call out.
Mm-hmm. And that is absolutely the kind of thing that I'm going to put in my back pocket for a role-playing game session at some point in the future.
What do you mean for a session? That's going in a book, Eddie.
That too, yeah, somewhere. That's going to get you somewhere, because that's a neat bit.
Just how I picked up names from TV shows I watched I want to put in a book somewhere.
That's true. Yeah,
I'm talking like game show names of like real people. It's like, that cannot be your real name. Oh, I got that name now, buddy.
There's a name that's been in my books for decades, because when I was working, I used to work as an administrative assistant in a college, and one of the people that went to school there, their name was Crystal Messenger, and I'm like, that is not your real name. That is not your real name. Who did you kill, and what inspector program are you in? My apologies, Crystal, if you're actually listening to this. I don't actually think you did that. I just think your name is cool. Anything else about episode A?
No, I've talked a bit about the trunk. I could let it go now. It's like a TARDIS trunk.
TARDIS trunk. Okay. Episode 2, Fresh Off the Boat B. After a recap of the previous episode, we see Akin and Lou find Booyan digging up his mother's allegedly empty grave. And Lou reveals what he whispered to Booyan, which is that his wife was dead. She was buried in the mansion's garden, but her dogs kept trying to dig her up, so Booyan's mother suggested moving the corpse to her grave instead. After accusing him of accidentally killing his wife, Booyan resists arrest, and Kin attempts to subdue him, but Booyan draws a gun and, after a scuffle, manages to escape in the car, and the two detectives check that the corpse in the grave does appear to be Ruan. So, one thing I've noticed the show does here, and it seems like it'll happen again in the third episode, so I think it's a thing they're going to keep doing, which is they set up a big secret and then almost immediately pay it off. It's like, what did he whisper in his ear? Oh, it's this, that your wife is dead. Well, we kind of knew that. That wasn't really a secret. I mean, why did you have to keep that from the audience? I could see why you'd want to pressure him with that information, but we kind of, as the audience, already knew that was what was on the table here. So it was like a bit of false jeopardy there.
They never said she was dead before. She was missing, is what it was.
In the previous episode, Kin's like, I think they buried her body next to the dog kennel, so I'm pretty sure her being dead was on the table by that point.
I don't remember. I've only seen it once. I can't say, but I want to say she's reported as missing because they kept saying the case is sewed up.
Yes. Yeah, that is true. Like, from the police perspective, she's simply a missing person, and the previous detective solved the case, even though she's still missing, which is something that's a bit vague. But to be fair, even Ken and Lou are like, that's a bit weird. But no, by the time they're hiding in the car, they at least suspect that she is dead. So we as the audience suspect that she might be dead. So the big reveal here that I've told you that your wife is dead. I'm wondering if there's a nuance there in translation maybe we're missing here.
Probably.
I feel like it was just like a bit like, well, yeah, because we're at a graveyard. I mean, seems pretty obvious.
I'm curious though, why is a graveyard like really deep in the middle of the woods with no obvious path to it? Because they didn't go on a footpath; they went through the woods to get there.
Yeah, and it's like his mother's grave, right? So it's like the concept of your parents already having graves to the side, that totally makes sense to me. But why would that graveyard be in the middle of nowhere? Yeah, I'm with you. It's like, that's all matters of suspicious, which makes me think that's probably not his mother's grave, and that's just the lie she told him to say.
But it's got to be, right? Because it was too fancy
you're right,
not to be.
No, not actually. You're right, because his argument is that he came to visit his father, and presumably they would be married side by side. So that's probably where his father's buried. So no,
Yes.
you're right. No, you're right. That probably is actually her grave then.
Just weird. But let it go for show convenience.
Sure. I mean, it's you have to have it in a creepy forest. So that's why it's the creepy forest.
What I don't know, though, is 1930 Shanghai gun laws. Like, I don't know how predominant guns are readily available, because we've established Lou had a gun, but Lou was a police officer, so that doesn't count. But we've got random husband with a gun.
Right. And This is
And
something I've noticed in British television too, right? Which is a good reason why to have this conversation is um, British villains also have a disproportionately high access to guns, right? But how much of that is British criminals actually have a high access to guns? It seems low based on the amount of shootings that we have here in the UK. Or is it villains have gun because American media has told us that is an escalation of stakes? A symbol of escalation of stakes is someone pulls out a gun.
which you're saying criminals, but we know that I think it was Boyan
Oh,
here
yeah.
isn't a criminal.
Right.
He's a lecherous lush. He's not like a criminal. He's just a
Right.
guy that once had money and now likes to drink and fornicate. So he shouldn't
Right.
have like that access.
Right. Or is it right? So again, this is a cultural nuance. Is like, is the fact he has a gun the fact that I'm too rich and don't care about gun laws? Is the fact that everyone who's rich had guns or everyone had guns? I mean, this is going to be not even 20 years after the revolution. So, like, I guess it's not implausible that lots of people had access to guns because of the revolution that happened.
But King doesn't have a gun yet. Like
Right.
that's one of the whole things. So that's why like I don't know the gun laws
Yeah.
or predominance of them for the period.
Right. I brought up the British media thing just because, like, it has been training me to realize that someone pulling out a gun is not just like a stock thing that happens. There can be media where that actually is itself a cultural impact. And I know, like, specifically in Japan, Japan also does not have a lot of guns. And so in Japanese media, when someone pulls out a gun, it's supposed to be a big deal. But you're right, I don't know culturally if China that's the same thing that's happening here or not.
Because right now this show has hit like a Buffy spot for me where there's martial arts and everything else, so it's more physical violence, and when you pull a gun you've escalated that to a different level. That's
Right.
why in Buffy guns are a rarity. Here it feels like guns are a rarity because then shit got real when you pulled the gun. Like before it was all like banter and solving cases and fucking around, but now it's like, oh shit.
And honestly, like, uh, um, Kin's doing a really good job of doing him, but then yeah, he pulls the gun and suddenly the fun fight scene stops, like dead in its tracks. So at least from a cinematography perspective, that certainly seems to be what's being said here.
Yeah. And then we have
which I like.
her saying, shoot him, and you have Lou going, I don't have a gun. It's like, what about the gun at the station? Well, I don't carry those. It's like
And then it leads to a great bit that even though the subtitles are rough, it still comes across, which is Lou going, I made all these predictions. Like, you didn't predict he would have a gun. and then he goes like, well, I use my brain to solve problems. Like, well, use your brain to stop his car. And I'm like, even through all of the barriers we have here, it was still genuinely laughed out loud. I'm like, that is a really funny moment.
And it has like a great bonding piece for like those two characters too. Now
Yep.
you see them like as a team, as a dynamic. Before
Yes.
they're building up to it, but at that moment you have them cemented as a team.
Right. And you get what is to follow on some of your analogies, one of the more common modern Holmes adaptation divides, which is that Watson tends to fill the physical role and Holmes the more mental role. So like, and this is a good adaptation of that, which is that, if it gets to violence, Kin's probably the person who's going to step up, and Lou is going to be useless in a fight. And now he's straight up admitting, I am not good in the fight. I don't carry a gun. I'm not going to help you in these situations. Which again gives Keen more things to do in those kinds of moments, but also tells us that when an action scene does happen, that means again stakes have been escalated. It's not fights aren't going to break out at random. That means stakes have increased, and that is why we're having a fight.
Yeah, loved it.
Anything else?
No.
Yeah. The two detectives, because they have a car, walk back to Shanghai. And Lou becomes concerned about Bouillon's repeated assertions they didn't intend to kill anyone. Kin provided a coroner report that the corpse was 5 days old and was wearing clothing that matches the description of the woman who was killed. His car was found crashed into an electric pole, but Bouillon was not found at the scene. This is when they get back into town. Kin discovers a conspiracy board at Lou's house, which relates to how Lou was instrumental in arresting a mysterious criminal known as the Captain. Spoiler: we're not going to know much more about this character, so I assume this is a season plot. To
His
distract her from
Moriarty.
right, exactly. To distract her from the board, Lou says he knows where Bouillon is, but she needs to change clothing. The owner of the Sullivan Apartments loans her a white dress, which looks similar to one Lou's sister once wore before the captain killed her with a bomb in a flashback. The two detectives go to the Paramount Ballroom where Bouillon is drinking heavily. He attempts to escape again, but is arrested by Kin after a gunfight. At the police station, Detective Yi and the other officers make fun of her, but Kin calls out Yi's negligence. Despite that, the bad publicity from the incident forces Superintendent Savoy to give the case back to Yi. So, the walking back to town scene again, just another great comedic beat. Just the how just haggard they look. Because again, it's like literally they're yelling about the car going away, and we hard cut to them walking in the town and just how exhausted they look. And then it takes like a beat before I think Kin makes a comment about why didn't you why did you what was your plan to get back if we didn't have the car, right? But you don't need even that line because you can see very clearly what happened. They had to walk back to town. So massive props to the people, the visual team for the show, because like so much of this is being communicated through the visuals, so where the dialogue is kind of extraneous, which is great for the situation we're in. Another thing is Lou's arrogance. I mean, he's the Sherlock Holmes character, so he's going to play the arrogant character. I think by this point, I'm starting to become charmed by his arrogance, but I think a big piece of that is because Kin keeps deflating it.
Yeah.
He keeps making these grandiloquent comments, and Kin makes some kind of very pragmatic point that deflates his commentary. And the actor of Lou's reactions to that are always usually kind of "aw," which again really helps. Again, they're, as we said, they have great comedic timing, so like it comes across very quickly as just banter between friends, even though Kin again does not think this guy should be doing this stuff.
As I had no idea about this show, when Bouillon crashes into the carpool after seeing the ghostly vision of his dead wife, I was like, are we going to go to a supernatural show with this? I was totally open. I was like, that would be awesome. I didn't know. So that was a nice thing for someone with no context for the show. Or was he just drunk still?
Right. And that's so I could go into a long rabbit hole, so I can't keep it brief, but like there is a whole subgenre of mildly supernatural detective fiction, particularly from the 20s and 30s. Ghost detectives and whatnot. And some of them specifically would play in a space of like, we've been told that a ghost has haunted this place, and like half of those cases are genuinely a ghost, and half those cases are just very mundane explanation. So you're right. Like I didn't either when I first watched this, like going, are they going to be ghost detectives? I mean, it starts off with ghost bullets like that. That's on the table. Spoiler, this all has a mundane explanation. But the show's doing a really good job of playing with that. And because you and I don't have any cultural expectation what the show's going to be, for me at least, it worked really well. Of like, it could have been a ghost because they superimpose two women on top of each other.
Yep.
And so, like, in a way that looks like it could have been a ghost possessing a woman's body. And so I was prepared for, after they left the graveyard, because so much time had passed, a ghost possessed her body, got her there, and walked in front of that car.
So that's a story I would have potentially written. So I am fascinated to see that's not happen. But then we totally hard cut away from all that to get backstory for Lou.
Right. And there's a great bit where he's in a bath, and there's lots of kind of freeze frame stuff happening. And it's like it seems like once an episode we're gonna have really cool visual thing of Lou's mind palace, right? And that was this episode's mind palace scene. Again, it's good to look at. It's done very well. It's also, because we know the media it's aping, it's like, okay, I know what's happening here. So like, it's not like this is a whole new thing, but it is done well for what it is done.
And I know they said Paramount the first time, and I was like, Paramount, really? But Paramount streaming network probably didn't exist at this point in time, but I was thinking,
I think it's a nod to the Basil Rathbone movies.
mm,
Because some of those I forget I was the first second half, but some of them were put out by Paramount.
okay.
So that's my thought. So there's also a weird bit. They cut to the ballroom and there's no music playing. We get audio of people laughing and we get audio of people dancing, but there's just straight up no music for like 15 seconds, and then a tiny bit of incidental music comes in at the edges before we go to the scene. My guess is there's a rights issue. That feels like they couldn't get international rights for the music they put in that scene, so they just cut it out.
Yeah, because you said 15 seconds. It was like I felt like more like a minute because I was like,
It felt
is there
long,
something wrong with this? Is there?
Yeah,
And then
I literally rewound it. I literally reloaded the page and watched it again to make sure there wasn't an error. Yeah.
Yeah, but then he teaches her how to ignore everything else and only focus on what's important.
Which is a bit weird. Like, obviously that wasn't the intention, right? It's very clear there was supposed to be music there, but like because there isn't, it is an interesting preface for that moment. Like we are also silenced and focusing on one thing, and then she goes through and does the exact same thing. So like it weirdly works, but it was very clearly accidental.
All right, so in your write-up you say after gunfight, there is no gunfight here, Eddie. This is a chase scene of upstairs, downstairs, and like jumping off of a balcony, how all people should do in a chase to end it. That is what we got.
I argue that it is very much a John Woo gunfight.
I will give you gunplay as you corrected, but not a gunfight because there was no firing back.
Fair enough. And I should say, like we talk about this, usually with these kinds of write-ups, Chris and I usually have something to work from. Again, I had nothing, so all of this is just me. So like, if there are mistakes in here, it is 100% my fault this time around. So yeah, that's fair. It is gunplay because some guns are shot, but again, Kin does not have a gun, so Kin is just hauling ass. And again, it's a great funny moment of like, he's like drunk out of his ass. And then she sees him and she just starts running after him. He's like, oh shit. This is like he's half drunk, falling out of the bed he's laying on, trying to get the hell away from them. Again, it's great physical comedy.
Keen saw a buckle and then swashed it.
Yes. Oh God. I love her so much. She's great action moments. And they're all different. That's the other thing. It's like we've had 3 action scenes now. 3, 4? 3. 2 in this episode, 1 in the previous episode. No, 3. But anyway, they've all been different. They've all been shot differently, paced differently, choreographed differently. So none of it feels repetitive. It all feels like every time is new and refreshing.
I'd say 4 action scenes if you want to count. Like when she almost fell off the building, then when she subdued Lou, then there was a gunfight at the start of this. You know, like maybe do it. There's gunfire at the start of this, and there's gunfire again in the club.
Yes, yeah. I remember there's a 4th one. I think you're right. I think I was kind of half remembering the ledge one. But yeah, they're all different, right? They're all visually different because like it's a good example. Like this is gunplay. There's fights between the exact same 2 characters in the same episode. One is they're opposite each other on a flat plane, and so the tension becomes, oh, the gun is out. Now things have escalated. Again, I said the fight kind of stops there. Now the guns are in play almost immediately, but because there's a lot of verticality that we didn't have in the previous scenes, they're going up and seeing they're falling off, jumping off of ledges, climbing up stuff. And so you're right, absolutely 1000% swashbuckling. And it even though it's the exact same dynamic, functionally we have the same plot beat again, but visually and dynamically is completely different.
And that's when we get back in the police station. They sort of hand the case back over.
Right. And then we get because she's very confident when the scene starts. Is like, you know, it's right. She has a moment where she has her shoes off because she can't run in those shoes. And so she's gesturing with the shoes as she's booking him. And then the other officer starts singing about Shanghai Nights and then making fun of her dress. And she's like, "Yeah, well, you thought the case was wrapped up, and I got him right here." And then it's like, "Yeah, but turns out the gunplay was actually a bad thing," which reinforces your idea of guns were not common in Shanghai at the time. Um, and so, because the ballroom people complained, I'm going to give the case back to the superior, smug, sexist guy. And Ken's like, "No, I hate you." So I mean, it's police corruption is definitely on the table in this show. Anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So uh, Yi and Kin both interrogates Buyan. And during the course of that, he confesses to accidentally hitting the ghost of his wife with his car, which is what caused the crash into the electrical we talked about. And then during the course of admitting to vehicular homicide of a ghost, which is a sentence I just never get tired of saying, his lawyer Wu comes back up and bails him out on a technicality. Keen is frustrated, but Lou talks with her on the roof of their apartment building and points out some of the flaws in their current theory that Ruin's death is an accident. When Keen mentions the ghost, Lou excitedly leaves to go back to the mansion, where detectives realize that the scene of the driveway was deliberately staged to cover up a murder. Episode ends. Now, up to now, I've been very nice about, despite the subtitle flaws, there's a lot of heavy lifting done with the acting and the cinematography helps follow along. There's a problem here, and I feel like it's probably due to translation errors. But as far as I understood, we thought this was murder at the beginning of this episode. At some point during this last half, it becomes an accidental death. And then it's the big cliffhanger twist is that it was murder all along. So I feel like there's a nuance here that got missed. Like, it was supposed to be that the reveal was that she was dead, not that she was murdered.
So
And
I
then
thought that originally she was missing, and they've deduced that she was potentially murdered, and now it comes out that she was accidentally killed.
right, but then the big reveal at the driveway is, I think I think it's even Lou, or no, it's Keen that says, "Oh, that's because she was killed." Right? It's like, why is that? Why are we ending on that note? I thought we knew that. You're right. I mean, first episode was she was missing, and then the big reveal at the end of that episode was she may actually be dead. And the beginning of this episode is she, as far as we know, is dead. But then the ghost stuff comes up, which again is not going to touch that per se. The fact that he thought she was alive again, whether as a ghost or a real person, is secondary. The fact is that he is therefore tacitly admitting that she died, but now it's accidental. And when Wu, the lawyer, comes to talk about this, he's talking as if accidental death was already a known thing that he was refuting. So maybe there's a scene missing, or more likely, again, a
So
translation nuance that I just feel like got missed
it's
there.
got to be something with translations, but I think he said hit he accidentally hit the ghost of his wife, and you can't kill a ghost. Essentially, is how
Right.
they got off, because he is not admitted to hitting anyone. Like, his missing, I had a vision of my missing wife, and I accidentally hit her with my car, so I crashed it.
Right. And you know what? I think I'm confusing this conversation with the conversation in the third episode. I think that's actually what happens here, because there's another conversation with Wu that has more of this nuance played out. So I'm willing to concede some of this is my memory playing up with me. But
It's also translation. Like, these
right.
translations were rough.
Yeah, I mean, I still feel like at least some of this is, you said, translation. Like, I was having to fill in gaps through it, and sometimes I would fill in gaps slightly incorrectly. Like, I had to rewrite chunks of this summary a couple times because I find out a detail later. I was like, oh, that actually meant this earlier thing happened a different way than I thought it did when I first watched this. So I had to rewrite that summary a little bit. Like the ghost thing, I moved that to later because initially it was unclear that it was a ghost. It was only in this later scene that he says, "I think I saw a ghost." But like, so yeah, there's a lot to work through on that front. But again, like but it's weird. Like, we're 2 episodes in, and near the end of the episode is the first time I start to really feel, okay, I think I'm missing something. You know, so that's a really good run, all things considered. especially for a
Yeah.
mystery. And then, yeah, again, a great comedic moment of like Kin's going through all the information, and Lou's like, I think there's something missing here. I think our theory is wrong. And she's like, yeah, so the guy blah blah blah. Oh yeah, and he saw a ghost, and Lou's like, why did you tell me about the ghost? And then just literally just fucking leaves. And she's like, what? It's just so
Scooby Doo.
because it's so offhanded. She's like, oh yeah, and he thought he saw a ghost, and he's just like so mad about that detail, which is perfect eccentric detective timing, right? But like again, the actors really pull that moment off. I think it's it for that episode. Unless you have something else.
Now we can move in the final episode. Dun, 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 dun.
Okay, fresh off the boat, C. Ken and Lou meet Wu and offering. Okay, so let me rephrase that. Ken and Lou decide to go visit Wu at his house, and at first they meet up with his housekeeper Shang, and they give her his business card. And then in the course of her taking the business card in, they look and see that Wu's in the midst of packing. He claims he has a new job and that the Ma family don't have enough money to pay his fees, which lines up with our earlier acknowledgement that they were a rich family and are no longer rich. Lou distracts Wu with a story about how Ruan was disliked by the Ma family while King searches Wu's house. Upon finding a book matching the one that Ruan owned, Lou accuses Wu of falling in love with Ruan and faking her death so she could run away from her husband's family. Kin presents the evidence they have, and Wu points out the evidence won't hold up in court and gloats about not having the key evidence of where he got this alleged second corpse from because no one's reported a missing woman that fits Ruan's description. So, yeah, this is part of the it was accidental, no, it was murder. That gets a bit in here too. Because Lou is now convinced that someone was murdered, but implies that it was not Ruan, which is totally new information to us as the audience. But this is the extrapolation of his "you saw a ghost" argument. There's also a bit where I think I just missed this. I think this is on me. One of the key bits of this is Keen finds a book. It's volume 2, where volume 1 was in Ruan's possessions, and she's like, "Hey, this is a match set," and they even have the same stamp
Bookmark,
on the inside.
whatever it is.
And I don't remember seeing the book earlier on, but that may have been just me missing that beat. Because one of the things the show is doing moderately well is kind of burying key clues. But sometimes they bury them so deep that you don't realize it was a clue. And again, because we're doing so much more work than a casual viewer would do, it's harder to track those small clues.
Or, you know what? I'm going to give the show credit and saying it's doing a great job of burying those clues, regardless of even if we were doing work or not for anyone
That's
else.
fair. You know what? That's fair. I'm going to give them that chance because they're also, let's be honest, parts of the show there it's glaringly obvious what it's doing. But when I only watched the first 2 episodes, I kind of fell off because I was like, okay, this is just going to be very obvious mysteries. I kind of already see where this is going. I should have kept watching this 3rd episode because this show did not go the way I thought it was going to go initially. Because you're right, like tiny little clues Duan starts bringing up, I don't remember even seeing. So it's like, oh, okay, all right, that's not what I expected. But again, like it's okay, Wu and Ruan had an implied relationship here, and I was like, oh, okay, that does open up some new avenues. It does explain why Wu keeps cutting in to shut down her husband because he doesn't want attention. He doesn't want attention drawn to the holes in his story because he's involved in that story in a way that was not immediately clear. So,
which explains why they could have a lawyer who keeps helping them and they don't have any money. Like it's spinning a whole bunch of plates and it's doing a fantastic job. I think if our subtitles were better, we'd be enjoying it even more than we already are.
I agree. And also, this is a 10-minute confrontation, right? Like this is just from the time, like literally, the episode starts with them showing up at the house, and then when he's like, "Hey, you know the key evidence," that's a third of the episode, and it didn't feel like 10 minutes. it was more a case of like I had to pause it for unrelated reasons. Like I was writing the thing up, and I was like, "Wait a minute, that's almost halfway the episode already." I was shocked at how fast that went.
Well, that's because you have stated multiple times in this podcast that that's why you love Star Trek. It's a good debate in
Sure.
like a conference room. Essentially, this is them
Right.
debating in a very swanky conference room.
Right. And again, we see a great thing of Lou and Kin working together because like Lou is doing the debating side of that, right? It's the I'm going to start spilling out my theory to keep Wu distracted and worried, and Kin's just straight up like going through his stuff, you know. And so she's not of the interrogator pair. This is not the time to break down his story. This is the time to get him worried and nervous so she can get hard evidence that she can then use to break down the story, which she does start to do at the second half of this interrogation. So again, already they're playing to each other's strengths almost instinctively. So like you can see how fast they're gelling as a team.
I will say though, I'm curious about the legality of them going through his shit, even though they're questioning him. There seems a little much how when they cornered Boogie upstairs going through his stuff. That was a little legally feels suspect.
That is again an interesting nuance. Is like, do police officers need warrants in 1930s Shanghai or not? I don't know.
I don't know.
So like maybe this is legal for all we know. But you're right, it does feel shady. It feels like both of them understand they're gambling something here.
Mm-hmm.
Because notably, specifically, it is Lou who gives his card, not Keen, who is the actual police officer. He is still a private detective. So I feel like that's a nuance to this scene of like, I'm coming here as a private capacity, which is why I'm giving you my card. Turns out the card has a completely different layer that we won't know until the end of the episode. But when I was watching it, that was a nuance. Is like, oh, he's giving his card. So that's what's good. Even though it kept translating as nameplates, which was very distinctive. They're business cards. They're just business cards. But yeah, his nameplate was the one that was given over.
All right, I'm ready to move on if you are.
Okay.
Unless you want to talk about his comment about peeing, if you want to drop that.
Yes. So at one point they do ask, hey, we found some of your glasses. Some glass was broken in the woods or the shrubs on the side of the driveway at the mansion. And so you fell down and broke your glasses. And he's like, I was just going to have a pee. Is it guilty to have a pee? And it's just like, this was like, yeah, it's not quite funny, but because of the rough translations, it's unintentionally funny.
I'm sorry, Eddie, that's funny. Like, you're a lawyer and you've essentially got two police detectives and you're asking them, is it illegal for me to go and pee in someone's bushes? That is a base level. That's like Three Stooges humor.
Right. And it's like I didn't think it was as funny because it felt a little more unintentional than some of the other humor at this point. But it was still pretty funny.
I'm thinking of it from an occupational roles is why it's funny to have the lawyer say that. He was like, here I am fancy. Yeah, I'm peeing in the woods, like I do.
And to be fair, like I think it's helping to at least illustrate part of the larger thread of that conversation, which is that he is starting to break down.
Yeah.
His story is unraveling. And it is both Lou and Kin's peppering of him that's causing a story to break down. And basically, the only way you can get them out of the house is to say, you're alleging there's a second corpse. You have to prove a second corpse exists. Otherwise, get the hell out of my house.
No, Eddie. He said they have to find the key evidence. The key evidence is what they need. Not a corpse. Right. Key evidence.
Key evidence, yes. That phrase gets up a whole lot in the second half of this episode.
To
the point where, again, I didn't write key evidence. I had to go back and add it to my summary because it's such a specific phrase. All right, let's just go through the rest of the episode because this is the wrap up.
But I want to say, Eddie, I feel like I'm in the club and he's throwing like key evidence ones at me the whole time from how much he's saying it. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The next day, Kin finds a note to meet at Wu's house at 10 a.m. When she arrives and sees Wu getting ready to board a taxi, Superintendent Savoy also shows up with a similar note, which turns out to have been written by Lou, who is already there. He says he found the key evidence, and after intentionally dropping a teacup, reveals that Wu's housekeeper is really Ruan. The reason Lou couldn't find any evidence of the missing woman to account for the corpse is because Lou used his own housekeeper as the corpse. Dun, dun, dun. Lou noticed that because Xing was illiterate, but she was able to read his business card. Wu confesses, claiming Xing blackmailed him with his infidelity, and when he assaulted her, she died in the struggle. After Wu is arrested, Keen is uneasy. The cruel rich husband turns out to be innocent, while the lawyer who saved Ruan is guilty. She decides the police should make people believe in justice, even if there's no certain justice in the world. Later, she realizes the crime scene in her apartment was actually a reconstruction of a murder made by Liu. As an extra, we see an extended version of Kin's arrival in Shanghai, where she chases after a thief and beats up his gang. Which I'll get to in a minute because thoughts about that. But anyway, so Liu arranging a meeting to be drama is peak Sherlock Holmes bullshit, right?
It's not even that, Eddie. That goes back to just peak detective in general. Like the Thin Man does it. Nero Wolfe does it. They all do it. Like this is
true.
This is the moment where I get to strut around and show you how smart I am compared to the rest of you.
I wonder why. I suppose you're wondering why I called you all here today. Kind of moment.
Even like Hercule Poirot and like the little gray cells.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair. I mean, arguably, this all came from Sherlock Holmes, but yes, it is a very common detective trope of like, I have increasingly implausibly drawn you together so I can reveal to you my brilliance. Mm-hmm. So, before I go into this actual reconstruction, there is a moment where Lou's trying to think through the case, and there's this great shot where he's sitting by the graveside, again, the black background, and he's staring at a woman wearing Ruan's dress with a bloody towel on her head. And I still was not 100% convinced that Supernatural wasn't off the table at this point because of that moment, right? It's like, maybe she is a ghost. Maybe that is the answer.
I'd left Supernatural behind at this point.
Okay. I thought I had, but I saw that. I'm like, maybe this is going a different direction than I thought. But it was the great, again, a visual image of him thinking about that scene, and specifically the fact that she had no head, which was a line that was kind of garbled way back in episode 2, was that he remarked her head was horribly disfigured. And so we bring that back in a visual way. And it turns out that was the key piece of it. Because of the way that the scene would have happened at the driveway, there's no reason to think that she would fall under his wheels, that her head would get unless her corpse was thrown under the car.
Yeah. That was a key
great little bit of deduction. Yeah. But in the course of this, because he might Lou gets all of them invited back into Wu's house, like, do you want to have us in the street? So Xing, quote unquote, is there, and he reveals her by pulling off a hair extension. And then we get a shot of they restage the moment where Lou gives his business card to the housekeeper, but this time we see it. We actually can see her face, and we realize that it is her. Which was a shot. I went back and double checked. That was a shot we did not have before. So it was a new shot that was added into the reconstruction, right?
Yeah.
So, all that aside,
this is something the show did before too, though.
Yes, where we showed your scene, but they added a new information. Yeah.
I'm speaking even specifically like in the first episode where we have Lou looks like a killer butchering someone, and then when he retells the story, they recontextualize it by showing you a different viewpoint of it, to see more of Lou like scientifically doing it. So this is a similar callback to that.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that, but that is a good shout. Yeah, but and so it's definitely hiding information for the audience. So like this is not Glass Onion territory of they just showed you the thing, right? This is the we hid stuff from you, but that's fine for this kind of mystery. I'm not really mad about that. The part I'm mad is the wrong word. Baffled by is Wu's actual plan here, right? Because his disguise of the woman that is missing and being sought by the police is to put a wig on her. That's it. Like 30s, they had photographs, right? I mean,
They should, but how many photographs? There were no photographs of the wife in the case file.
okay, but this whole case file started by his eerily
And
precise description of her.
he gave a precise description of what she was wearing, because they even make a point of saying
Uh,
when they went, and this is something else, like why I think the show does a lot of great work, is he mentions that specifically when they went to the elder Ma's house, there were photos of the family, but none of Mrs. Ma. They made a specific point of
oh
saying that.
shit, you're right. I did forget that piece. Okay, no, that's actually fair then.
Like, even through the bad translations, I want to say I think this show is doing like a lot of heavy lifting, like bad translations, and we still get like some of these snippets of information, and they say that specifically. There are no photos of her in the case file, but
I had
like we
forgot.
do see
I had
that
forgot.
Lou has a murder board that has photos on it, so we know photos are a thing, and they
Right.
constantly reference them.
Okay. So yeah, this is a case where again, because translation, maybe the subtlety of there's no photo here, maybe got lost a bit in the translations we had. But you're right. I now that you said, I do remember that being a plot point of the reason why the plot point was buried for me was because her not having a photo was reminiscent of the Wu family. I'm sorry, not the Wu family. The Ma family hated her, and it's like to the point where they didn't even have her photo on the board. And so like you got the clue, but in the wrong context for the reveal here, which is great. Actually, it's really good mystery building.
The thing is, we don't know if it was a Ma family that did it, or if they did it and took down a photo of her that may have been up.
Oh, right, but the point is that that, but that, right. So what
Yeah, we're saying the
that
same
that
thing.
kind of right that context of whether the photo was taken down or just never taken is secondary to the revelation in the context it came in, which is that she was dishonored and they didn't like
Yeah.
her. But from our perspective, and again, Lou's just putting it together now because you mentioned it, the detectives therefore have never actually seen her face, and so you convinced me. Yes, so Lou would not have known that this was because, like, without that piece, you have to understand this looks really stupid, right? But with that piece, it makes a lot more sense now.
And imposing kind of like a 20s to 30s British classism, which may not fit for like 1930 Shanghai. We've established that this is a lawyer who is affluent, who has a servant. I'm assuming most people aren't looking at the servant as a person; they're looking at this as a servant. So it's
Right,
irrelevant, like who you may be.
and to the show's credit here, when we first see that scene of Lou handing over his card, even the camera refuses to see her as a servant, right? The way I genuinely didn't get that there was a gap there until it was pointed out to me, and I went back and rewatched it. I just
Yeah.
saw a person was handed a card, you don't see her face. She turns around off camera and walks away to go talk to Wu. And it's like, oh yeah, it's just a servant. I don't care about it. So even the audience is kind of inadvertently brought into you just kind of look past them until it becomes relevant. So all
Mhm.
right. No, I've been talked around on that plot point because I was initially a bit annoyed when I first saw that, but now I missed a piece, and I'm happy to say that makes me feel a lot better about where this landed.
And
Um,
I liked the fact that even the superintendent says, like, essentially, like, the law is not nice in our translations, and
yeah,
arrest everybody. Like, gotta go.
right, right. Which leads to another. I'm less concerned about this, but still kind of vaguely annoying bit. But this is also a TV series. Is that um, Kin's like, well, he was trying to save her. Why is he getting arrested? It's like he murdered. Louis points out he murdered his housekeeper, right?
Yeah.
He murdered somebody. Um, so it looks like the show is trying to play with the um, why do the rich get away with crimes and other people don't? And it's like it doesn't work because a lawyer is not a lower class person from my perspective, and he did straight up murder his housekeeper because she was threatening to blackmail him.
And it is not like, and they say that he got too rough and he like pushed her, but
Right,
that still is an assault. What could have happened is she should have fallen or had some sort of like accident, and then he
right,
took advantage of the situation. Then her comment would have had more like weight, I think, as
right,
an audience member to go, oh.
right. And it's one of
He still broke the
the
law though by covering up the death of a person, but it wouldn't have been him as a murderer.
right. Right, and I think that you're right. That small nuance would have made the piece after make more sense because it seems weird to have a police officer go like, "I feel weird about arresting a murderer." And it's like, why? This is the whole job, you know. Uh, but I get where the show is kind of going, and again, it's a bit clumsy, and I don't know how much of clumsiness is due to again a translation, but like she's like, I it seems like there's no real justice in the world. So being a police officer, I want people to believe that it is there. I feel like the intent is she would like the police to uphold the ideals of justice while recognizing that justice is not a perfect mechanism. That seems to be where she's going with it. Still not great, but I can also see why in communist China that would absolutely be a moral you'd want to have the audience to have. So I can't harshly judge the moral lessons of a different country's media from that perspective.
And I always have mixed feelings about anything that's definitely related to like law enforcement, especially if law enforcement being squeaky with the law and how they're implementing it.
Right. Uh, uh, well, let me before I forget, I want to quickly talk about the extra before I talk because I was about to move into wrap up. So I want to do that. Yeah. Yes, the extra is just the scene where Caden comes into Shanghai is now extended out to about 5 minutes, where some guy steals something, and so she chases down a very cool chase scene, then beats up his entire gang before getting back onto the rickshaw to go to the police station. And it's like it's a cool bit, but I think this points to your earlier comment about they're filling in time. It's this episode ran 5 minutes short, so this scene that we cut from episode one, let's reshoot it a little bit and stick it at the end as an extra, which is kind of weird to have in a random episode of a TV show. But again, Chinese television media do this all the time. It may be a common thing there. It was just a bit odd to me.
Yeah.
But it was a great fight scene, so I'm not mad about that. Because otherwise, this episode didn't really have any fight scenes.
It had verbal fight scenes, Eddie.
It did.
Witty banter back and forth. Ching, 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 ching.
So, what are your thoughts about this show I made you watch?
So I was actively neutral before the call with Eddie. Like the whole time, he's like, "Oh."
I was like, "Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh shit!"
I liked it, but of course, I enjoyed a lot of the Benny C. Sherlock, and this slots perfectly into my Benny C. Sherlock sort of vibe for it. So I would probably watch a couple more episodes if I had free time. I would likely not watch all 24 episodes, but maybe another case or so. Because I also think I know for a fact, a little bit of reading is that they pull in a corner and then there's three of them. I'm curious how a dynamic with three leads would work.
That'd be interesting.
Like I said, I watched that YouTuber and I learned some stuff from like her. So
I may have checked it out then. I was hoping that between that and the historical stuff from a perspective that maybe you don't see very much of, I thought that might also be fun for you. So I'm glad that worked.
Like that's be the bigger draw than the Sherlock piece, just to see how much they would actually show of sort of 1930s Shanghai.
Yeah. For me, like it was weird. It's weird because like it was fine. If this show came out on DVD with a better subtitle track, I'd probably buy it, right? And I would probably slowly make my way through it.
Eddie,
yeah.
Question. I have to stop you now. Did you say a DVD?
Yes.
Don't we have things
Blu-ray.
like Blu-rays now?
Whatever.
DVD. What is a DVD, Mr. Webb?
Cassette tapes are when you have magnetic tape to record things. No.
I'm sorry, you're saying you buy the DVD of this.
Blu-ray. Sorry, the Blu-ray. DVD still exists, goddammit.
DVD!
Because they're also really cheap, which is great. But no, so I mean, like, I admit that subtitles make it harder for me to watch. And some of it also was because I had to pay attention enough to write a plot summary. Took a lot longer than normally would watch this. So like I know some of that is where I'm at. I don't think would ever be a show in its current form that I would just say, I don't watch a few episodes of this kind of character. I don't think it's quite there. Um, but it is very much making the show it wants to make extremely well. And it's trying to be bizarre, weird mysteries with some fight scenes, and it's doing exactly that show, and with some comedy beats. That's all great. I really have nothing bad to say about the show overall. I have nitpicks, obviously, but again, most of them fall into the gutter of those YouTube subtitles. So I would definitely give this show much more interest if a professional subtitling team came along and did it. And the special effects are, I mean, there's a couple of obvious blue screen moments, like particularly when they're on the roof talking. That was pretty clearly blue screen. There was another moment of those pretty clearly blue screens. But otherwise, the actual cinematography is really good. This feels like it would have been a show like on a B tier US cable network, right? This is something like the USA Network would make, or whatever. Peacock, maybe.
It can't. Given that it came out in 2019, I could see it on Disney Plus.
Okay, fair. Hulu, maybe is the better example.
Because you're saying like, no offense to Peacock, like because Peacock carried Psych, and I love Psych, but I think it would be a higher tier show than what would be on Peacock. It'd be on Apple TV, hands down.
What's weird, I guess, for me is that despite the fact that this case goes across 3 episodes, it doesn't feel as heavily serialized as most modern US television.
Yeah.
Because to go back to your BBC Sherlock analogy, if these were edited like BBC Sherlock episodes, where they would be just an hour and a half long episodes, this would be exactly that.
Yeah.
And because like this ends pretty cool. So there's a couple minor plot threads here and there, but ultimately this ends pretty satisfyingly. There's not a ton of stuff. I mean, we'll watch next episode is going to be another case, right? And there'll be some stuff like this reference to the captain and whatnot that will probably carry through, but ultimately it's going to be just another relatively self-contained case. So like from that perspective, it does feel like a slightly older television style, even though again, it's spread across 3 episodes. Which makes me think, maybe it was pitched as we'll do it exactly like BBC Sherlock, and they said, no, we have to do it in half-hour chunks. And so they restructured the scripts to be half-hour, a bit like classic Doctor Who, actually. It's like, every half hour you have to have the cliffhanger,
Yep, to get you to come back.
And maybe that's one of the reasons why I was intrigued by it, because it does, now that I say that, there are some bits of that old school Doctor Who structure that does appeal to me. And there is that in this.
I'm curious about the TV run, though, if it ran like daily. Because when I looked it up, I saw that it premiered, I want to say, in April of 2019, but then the show run ended in May of 2019.
Oh, really? Wow.
So I'm curious if like every day of the week, like one episode, and then they were done. But I don't know, because maybe the site I looked at was wrong. I didn't do a lot of looking.
It was launched on a streaming service, so I also don't know if like 12 episodes went up and then another 12 episodes went up. It could have just been 2 chunks, like sometimes happens.
Sure.
But anyway, I am glad that I got a chance to watch this again. I'm glad we can't talk about it, and I think at some point I'll probably check it out. I'm glad I remembered it, because like it clearly something got in me. And I like the idea of it a whole lot. Chinese 1930s Sherlock, I mean, just sounds really fucking cool. So like I think I'll probably give it a try again, but again, like I would love to see or if a fan sub community finally decided to take this on, that would be great,
Yeah, I would say it firmly falls in the watchable category.
Yes, I completely agree. And it's especially great considering, again, this is because of the language barrier. How watchable it is just really impressive. So what watchable thing are we going to do next week, Chris?
So as we are a podcast that loves us some mysteries and detective shows, we're going to shift from like 1930 Shanghai, I think, to the US movie that happens, I want to say, in 1980s Jamaica, the cinematic masterpiece, The Mighty Quinn, 1989, starring Denzel Washington.
Amazing. And if people want to ask you about the Mighty Quinn or about Detective L, where would they find you online?
You can find me on Blue Sky at Dark_Hue. Come into the Darker Hue Discord. If you want to give me money so I can keep making Eddie do these things, go to my website or my Patreon and support me. What about you?
If you want to find me, I'm available at pugsteady.com. That is my website. That's also where you can find me on Blue Sky. Or you can also find me on the Darker Hue Discord. We're usually hanging out and talking about stuff. So come in and tell us what you think. And with that, we will see you next time where we're going to do some more stuff we think is cool.